Taggy's film Coup 53 is a really important film. It addresses a very shocking episode in British history, and it deals with it very well.
I thought this is a fantastic opportunity to retell the story of what Britain did in Iran. So I handed him all my research files.
These look like actual working copies of transcripts, interview transcripts.
When I saw Coup 53, I was completely shocked because the clear inference that we had filmed Norman Derbyshire, and that not only had we filmed him, but we had removed the film from our final programme under government pressure, and that I was lying when I spoke to Taghi Amirani in 2018. The Derbyshire transcript is of a research interview which we conducted, we think, in about December 1982.
We did an interview.
You interviewed Derbyshire?
Not filmed.
Not filmed.
That's the whole point. He never agreed to be filmed.
I actually told him very, very clearly that we'd never filmed Derbyshire. I called Mark, but his memory was shaky, unfortunately. But I insisted at the end that he had never appeared in any version and he should go and check his facts.
I don't think we ever filmed him. And you haven't seen any rushes in there either.
We pointed this out to him, and for some reason, he decided that he'd go ahead with what he kept calling the lost footage, the lost interview. Where is this lost interview? As though he was Sherlock Holmes chasing some elusive bit of super drama.
Even if you got to an MI6 officer and got them to talk, they were always under threat. The typical threat was, I will lose my pension if I talk to you. MI6 officers did not go on camera, ever.
Why did they select bits of interview from him, cut it out, paste it into a script, probably edit it into the film, but he didn't make the final cut? He's not in the finished film.
It's meant to be a documentary telling the truth, and he lets this whole long process run and run for the best part of the first hour of his 2-hour film.
As soon as we saw the film, we contacted Taghi to say, look, you've included a huge number of errors. There is no evidence of us having filmed Derbyshire. And we sent him a big document with a whole sheaf of evidence and documents as to why this was wrong. And we asked him to correct the film.
When I did see it, I just said, to quote, this is fucking bullshit. Because it is. It's built on a castle of sand. It just collapses because the central idea is false. There was never an attempt to cover up Derbyshire's role, certainly not by me. I did it 20 years ago.
Amirani was very, very clear to me early on in the various conversations that we had that there was very clear proof that there had been a filmed interview with Derbyshire and that I had actually filmed it myself.
So what do you remember of Derbyshire on that day? Because he clearly, from what you said and from his transcript, he was very open, he was very blunt, he was memorable.
I got the impression that he was somebody who felt that there were things to be said that hadn't been said.
Later on, I realized this was impossible when I began to go through what had happened with the end of Empire Team. So I wrote to Taghi that I realized that I couldn't swear on the Bible that I had actually been present at a filmed interview with Derbyshire. I got no reply to that.
They refused to make any cuts, including of the cameraman, who had by then retracted his whole testimony because he realized that he'd got in a muddle.
More recently, much more recently, I wrote to him saying that I was very disappointed that my statement was still in the film, and I was very concerned that it was still in the film because it was, in fact, untrue.
Probably the most damaging allegation in Coup 53 is that we the End of Empire team colluded with MI6, gave in to censorship, and cut out this man Derbyshire from our film.
Derbyshire asked to be taken out of the whole thing, you know. Both Mark and Alison told me about it.
You think Derbyshire asked to be taken out because?
Because the British government had not allowed him to do it.
Well, of course, that didn't happen because we never filmed the man, therefore he couldn't be cut out. A key person was Stephen Dorrell.
I'm on my way to see Stephen Dorrell, the writer of the book MI6.
Dorrell appears in the film, appearing to back up the idea that we filmed him, and therefore it was quite likely that he had to be cut out due to pressure from MI6.
I've got the cover letter somewhere.
I'd love to see that. And how did Nigel Hawkes get hold of this?
He didn't tell me, but I think it was from the filmmakers themselves. It's very clear I was misled about the actual transcript. The director knew that I had it, knew that I'd used it for a long time. What he did not tell me was that he already had one from 2014. But he also misled me by saying that the interview had actually been filmed, that there was actual film of Norman Derbyshire. So my comments were totally based on that, which was misleading.
In mid-September, ITV Archive withdrew their archive license for some 14 minutes of footage from End of Empire Iran, which Teggy had included in his film, because in their view, it put Granada itself and the End of Empire team into disrepute. Now, this was their decision. We knew nothing about it. We didn't even know that this was an issue at all. As a result of this, it made such a hole in Coup 53 that they themselves, Amirani Media, took their film down, withdrew it from circulation, pending what they called a copyright issue. But he goes on claiming that we did our best to block his film. Wrong. Again.
So the film has been re-released, and it includes a right to reply from us where we categorically assert that we never filmed Derbyshire and that we certainly didn't collude with any government pressure.
The trouble was that these small amendments actually did not in any way address any of our major concerns.
The impression remains that we are being dishonest and that we are covering up some form of government censorship. The idea of this is ludicrous, especially at Granada Television at that time, where we particularly prided ourselves on speaking truth to power.
The word I always use is integrity. That's really important to me when you're doing these kind of things. And this has none. The central idea is, to my mind, fraudulent. It's an attempt to create an interesting documentary where the central idea they know is wrong, and they fitted interviews and made up stuff to fit into the central narrative.
My main beef is that they've ignored the evidence. They now have the evidence and they've ignored it and they've not corrected the film.
It's a very important film. There's no denying that. It covers a pretty appalling story in British history and the way in which they dealt so high-handedly with not only Iran, that's what the whole End of Empire series was about, really. And it's just a crying shame that he's muddied his own waters. You know, he's discredited his film, which purports to be a documentary telling the truth by including a lot of bogus material.
The idea that this documentary gets awards is pretty frightening. It's kind of Trumpland, where fake material is accepted as fact, and it's simply untrue.